But my message to us today, for us to share, and it's for me as well, it's for all of us in this room, is how do we move from surviving to thriving as a community, right? So I think a lot of us, this 90s group, we are kind of in the same space. Our kids are sort of growing up. We are starting to ask those questions of, as people will start to fly the nest, what's next for us? Do we stay? Do we go back? Watu wa broti, tumejenga, nyumbani, Yes. Do we stay? Do we go back? What does that mean for us? And indeed, if you've been here since the 90s, the question is, who are you? Who am I? Where is home? And that is not an easy question to answer. I look at the kaleidoscope of colors in this room today. I look at the cultures and the way people have chosen to express themselves. I see in us, of course, the beautiful, beautiful skins with my son has always said, we are all the color of milk. We only have different levels of chocolate in the milk, right? But it's beautiful to see all the chocolate, these beautiful chocolates in this house, in this room today. And but besides that, I ask myself, how are we showing up as truly authentic, truly Kenyan, truly who we are? At our table, we were talking about how many of us did not even recognize that we were black until we came here. And then you're just like, in fact, I tell people the day Kenyan Meru Kendi met black Kendi, that was a weird day. You're like, hey, I is black. People see me as black, and what does that actually mean? And I remember first rejecting that and saying, I don't want to be black. What the hell is that? And then after some time, I realized for me to navigate this space, I must first accept that that is how I am seen. And based on how people perceive me, doors are open or doors are shut. Right? And opportunities are created, and opportunities sometimes are denied me based on nothing else but how I look. So then, as we think about where we want to go and thrive, as we ponder as to whether we are surviving or thriving as part of the black community in this country, let me give you a little bit of a quiz. So I'll give you a fun fact first. So these are 2022 figures that you can find on .gov.uk. And this has to do with household income. Now, 45% of households in the UK have a weekly income of below £600 before tax. What do you think? That's 45%. So in terms of the black community, what do you think the percentage is? Higher or lower? Lower? Okay. Can I hear a number? Table 7? What do you think? I'll repeat the fun fact again. 45% of households in the UK have a weekly income of below £600 before tax. Weekly. Below £600. Black community is higher or lower? Lower. You say higher. Did you say higher? Somebody says higher. By how much do you think? 70%. Oh my God, we have pessimists in this house. But actually, they are right. It is higher. 54%. And we are the most likely of all ethnic groups to have a weekly income of £600 a week or less. Basically, we are the poorest of all the ethnic groups. Okay? Now, 23% of households have a weekly income of between £1,000 and £1,999. Now, who do you think is the highest? Which ethnicity do you think has an income of £1,000 to £1,999 a week or more? Aziz, who do you think? Aziz is like, why did you pick on me? You should know this one. Who do you think? Asian? You're absolutely right. So not only Asian, but Indian. Okay? So Indian, 41%. 41% of them are earning this, whilst 54% of us are earning below 600 pounds. Now then, let's look at the highest one, 2,000 pounds and more a week. Who's earning that? How many people say white British? Come on, man. Okay, Jewish. Let's start with Jewish. Jewish in the house? White British? Okay, guys are like, no, us, we don't want to show ourselves. Okay, I will tell you. No comment. I'm putting you on the spot, sir. Surprise, surprise. Indian. 14%. And they are the most likely ethnic group to have to earn 2,000 pounds and more a week. Okay? Black. What is our percentage? For them, they are 14%, as we are 4%. 4%. So that gives you an indication of where we are, right? As a community, as a collective. And remember, we are talking Indian versus black. Are you seeing the difference? One is a country. The other is what? A race. So vis-a-vis an entire race, the Indians are doing the best in this country, which is not even their country. So what does that give them? The fact that they have so much money, what does it give them? Power. Collective bargaining power. Okay, so then we say to ourselves, oh, you know, we are here, maybe the system is rigged. By the way, the system is rigged because it was never created for people who look like you and me, who look like majority of the people in this room. Okay, I know we have some allies and we recognize you. Thank you for being here. No, it matters. It does matter that we have allies and co-conspirators. So, but for most of the people in this room, the system was not created for us. And therefore, it is no wonder that these are the statistics that we have to deal with. But then we say, I'm going to leave and I will go to Kenya. Okay, fair enough. So you go to Kenya. Why? Because majority of the people look like you and me. So let's guess. 5 richest people in Kenya. Where do you think they come from? China, okay. India. Where else? If you look at Kenya's rich list, there is only one black family, and that's a Kenyatta family. They are, the first one is Samia Naushad Merali of the Merali group, of the Samia group. Bimji Depar Shah, okay, Bitco. Jaswinder Singh, who's in textiles, and Mahindra Rambai Patel. These are the richest people in Kenya. So even in our own country, now can we say the system is rigged? Something's going on, right? What do you all think is going on? Corruption, okay. Who's doing that? Now, corruption is an interesting one because I did my PhD on anti-corruption. So I can tell you the problem of Kenya is not really corruption, no. And if you look at Golden Bag and Anglo Leasing, where were they headquartered? England. So, and most of the players, we are just pawns in a game that is not our game, okay? So I can tell you we are not the problem. But where in that regard? But we are the problem in one regard. So when you look at, and I challenge you to Google this, the African or the black person and self-loathing and self-hatred, right? What is a colonial project? For divide and rule, okay? That's one thing. What else do we know about the colonial project? Inferiority. Okay, what else? So this is gonna, I was told to challenge you, so this is not gonna be comfortable. I should have said that at the beginning, right? and for all of us in this room. So here is what it is. For us to be the people we are, the colonial project was really a project that dehumanized us. Because to treat folks the way we were treated, they had to be less than human. Because you cannot treat a human being in the way that we were treated. So what happens is that we hold a standard. And the standard we call is whiteness. And by the way, when I talk about whiteness, I'm not talking about white people. Okay? There is a movement called there is whiteness as a socio-political force, right? That people aspire to. And what it does is that it centers humanness. So whiteness becomes conflated with humanness, synonymous with humanness. So everything that is human is white, and everything that is not white is not human. Do you get me? That is why you've heard of the Do Not Touch My Hair movement. Now, the ladies in this room know what I'm talking about. Okay? So somebody feels that it is their right to run their hands through your hair, and they don't know you. You don't know them. And when you turn around and say, what was that about? They act all upset. And they're like, why? But why? I was just, appreciating you because you're like a dog. You see, when you pat a dog should wag its tail and say, thank you, master, because you noticed me. But no, the fact is that we are also capable of complex feelings, aren't we? We are human and we have human emotion. Now, the minute you start to understand that whiteness becomes the center ring of whiteness is the problem of the world today, because whiteness has contributed a lot to the world, but it isn't good, that contribution, because it's synonymous with capitalism, individualism, unhealthy competition, and the reason why our world is sick today. Right? But the unfortunate thing, and when I talk about self-loathing, is that whiteness came as it came through the colonial project. But guess the people who have embodied whiteness the most? Someone whose name starts with S and B. I shall not finish the name. You know who I'm talking about. Think about I'm talking from a political perspective, S and B, right? You know who we're talking about? So that is a very good example of embodied whiteness and high levels of whiteness, right? And what happens is that people start then to hate themselves. So people are just, it's landing for some people 5 minutes later. So anyway, but so we start to loathe ourselves because we are told we are not beautiful enough. The standard of beauty is something else. The standard of intellect, we were talking at our table, the standard of civilization belongs somewhere else. And so we start to immerse ourselves in this self-loathing. And this self-loathing means that we then start to measure ourselves against something that we will never be able to achieve. Because the better we get, the more the goalposts move. Okay? So then mine comes to identity. So who are we? Because then how do we start to undo these things? Once we have understood this disease, this neo-colonial disease that is eating us, this neo-colonial disease that is making us not thrive, not only here but back in our home countries, how do we start to address that? And I would challenge you, the first thing is to look yourself in the mirror and actually acknowledge that there is whiteness in you. It is not something to be ashamed of, but it's something to be aware of, and then to say, how do I address this, and where does whiteness show up in my life? My father has always told me the story. So one time I went to his house, and he was building, and he was putting up this wall, and he was very annoyed at how much money this wall was costing him. And I remember him saying, but Kendi, it bothers me that I have to put up a wall to protect my house. The question is, who am I protecting myself from? And this monster that I am trying to create, to keep out of my home, who has created it? And this was my father sitting down saying, I acknowledge that I have played a part in creating that monster. This distance between the haves and the have-nots. And the middle class in Nairobi driving in our big cars, making sure our windows are wound all the way up so that the poverty on our streets doesn't come in. right? The way people treat their house help and the people who work for them in the homes and so on and so forth. I could go on forever, but that is not the point I was trying to make. The point I was trying to make is that we must face our self-loathing, and because we cannot blame the system forever. Because if the system is broken in England, where we did not create this system, then what are we doing after 60 years of independence in our own country, that the people who seem to be at least economically thriving seem to be people who are different from us? That is something we need to challenge and question. But it isn't all about money. So I had the occasion of meeting a very wealthy man called Vijay Patel, who is from Kenya, hails from Kenya, but is a multimillionaire in every currency and lives in this country. So this man was speaking to students, Kenyan students, just a few weeks ago. And I remember what Vijay said. Vijay stood up and he did the usual spiel that millionaires do, of I started with, I don't know, some meager amount of money. I worked very hard, blah, 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 blah. And here I am now, this multimillionaire guy. But for me, that story was not the story it wasn't what touched me about his story. It was that at the end of the story, this elderly man, proud, tall, elderly man, stood in front of all of us and these Kenyan students, and he broke down. And he said, ultimately, I have made a lot of money. In every currency, I am a successful man. But I have one regret, and that is I did not spend enough time with my partner. I did not see my children enough, and that is my biggest regret. And that, for me, is what stayed with me. And he said, biashara will always be there tomorrow. In other words, broti will always be there tomorrow. Shift will always be there tomorrow. But the person, your loved one, the person who's next to you, the person who cares for you, will not always be there. And that is the thing that is more important. Now, what have we done for ourselves? We have stepped away from community. So bringing it back to community. We have stepped away from community. So in embracing capitalism, we've become very individualistic. And we have forgotten that the elixir that meant our ancestors survived is Ubuntu, is that spirit that honors the interconnectedness of each and every one of us. Now we see our collectivism as a burden. When people from back home reach out to us, we say, but why are they reaching out to us? Because we are Maju. No, it is because you have a responsibility. You are because they are. And I was saying to my table that I find myself in a lot of white spaces, the only person who looks like me. And sometimes they say, oh, we'll try and be your friends and be your allies because, you're alone. And I go, hell, no, I ain't. Have you met me? I walk in collective, me and my ancestors. I walk in collective. I'm never alone. How can I be? The fact that each and every one of you here is testament to a strong and good story of survival and thriving of your ancestors. You stand on the shoulders of giants. So how can we then be here and not thrive? Now I'll tell you what the problem is. Another problem that we have is that we come to this country or wherever we go in the African diaspora and we all want to go back. So we came. And all of you in this room, the fact that you've been here since the 90s and you're dressed to the nines as you are, and you are here today, tells me that something is going well in your life. Okay? We all have challenges. We all have problems. That's normal, right? But something is going well in your life. So you have come here and you've made it and you've taken 5 steps forward. Then you say to your family, oh, you guys have gone to university, guess what? Now, I want to go back to Kenya so that I can go and be with my people. I'm done with this racism. I'm done with this, that, and the other. Okay. What happens to your children? What happens to them when you leave? They lose community. So you took 5 steps forward because you wanted a better life for your kids. They have to take 3 steps back. Okay? So then, when it comes to competitiveness with their peers, where are they? You see? So then what happens for us? I think we are the generation that is called to make the sacrifices. And I'm not saying that if you want to go back home, I'm not here vilifying you or saying there's anything wrong with that. But I'm saying for the majority of us, we are called to start creating intergenerational wealth on this land, because this is our land. It was built on the blood, sweat, and tears of our ancestors. Someone tells you to go home? Hell no. You've come to collect that which is yours. Okay? So, we have to create opportunities for our children and our children's children to thrive here and to thrive back home. For you to contribute, you do not need to go back home to Kenya physically. Okay? You need to thrive where you are planted. And by thriving where you are planted, you become a beacon of hope and an example unto others that people who look like you and me mean something. And when you climb that corporate ladder, for heaven's sake, don't then take the ladder up with you. What is the point of being the only one? The only one who's doing well. Because we've been told a lie. Capitalism has taught us a lie. It has told us that there isn't enough. So we come from a place of abundance. Do you guys know Africa? Place of abundance. We have everything. Then you come, you're told, no, there isn't enough. So you don't share your knowledge, you don't share expertise, you don't share resources. Those of us who did 844, when you did your exams, you sit like this because you don't want the other person to copy. Sindio, this one here to copy, because you think if they get an A, somehow you lose an A. So, I would say, now before I end, that what we need is collective healing. We have all been harmed, and I'm not just talking about from the colonial project, but in many other ways, we have been harmed. We lived through a dictatorship. You know, when I tell my children about the things we did in the Moi era, and before, you know, I used to hear this word dictator, and I'm like, yeah, he was a dictator, yeah, whatever. And then I started to break it down, and I'm like, we were singing these love songs to this man. Who of you are in mass choir? Yeah, people of mass choir, right? Yes, the love songs. How we loved this man. He was farmer number one, teacher number one, everything number, isn't it? And actually, it's when you unpack it, you go, this was crazy. But for us, it was our normal. So we knew no better, right? So we've been harmed in more ways than one. But we have also caused harm. We have also caused harm, and we need to take responsibility for that. But then what we want to do is start to walk towards healing justice, to heal ourselves. And the only way to heal is through love. When we talk about love, people go, okay, there they go again, mushy, mushy, mushy. But that's not what I'm talking about. I will quote my very good friend, David Robinson Morris, an amazing author and teacher and writer. And he says, love is more than a feeling. It is an action. It is an act of the will to love. It is a choice. Even more, love is an ethic. It is an ethical, social, political, cultural responsibility and commitment to truth, to overcoming domination, oppression, and subordination. And where does love start? Where does love start? Where does love start? That is not loud enough. I don't think people know. Where does love start? With yourself. And guess who the hardest person is to love? Yourself. So, my friend, you cannot give that which you do not have. Remember, I said the problem of the black person is self-loathing and self-hatred. The way to path to healing is to change that self-hatred and self-loathing into self-love, okay? Self-love, where you show up and you take up space. When you take up space, you don't take up space as another. You know, there are people who not only here in England, but even in Kenya, take pride in the fact that their children do not speak their mother tongue. Yeah? And I say, they don't understand, right? Isn't it? And I had the great pleasure of hosting Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o. And he really challenged us. He really challenged us in terms of that which we have lost. Our generation is a generation that has one leg in the past and one leg in the future. It is us who must remember who we are and educate our children in whichever language, okay? Educate them in terms of who they are. If they have lost language, some of us are guilty. We need to find a way to express still in our way, in our own authentic way, who we are and remind our children who they are. Only then can they learn to take up spaces themselves. We come into this country and we were talking over there with some of the teachers at my table about accents and the way people speak and everything. And you come into this country, people are saying to you, oh, I don't understand your accent. And you start thinking, I'll take elocution classes so that I can sound more British. Why the freaking hell would you want to do that? Yeah. Do they tell the French? Or the Spanish? You speak the way you speak because you have 4, 5, 6 maybe other languages that you speak. You're multilingual. But people say, I don't speak any other language, I only speak English. Oh, do you speak Swahili? Yes, I do. Swahili not a language? Do you speak Kikuyu? Thank you, sister. Thank you. You understand? So we must learn how to take up space. There's no point in us being in senior leadership if we are going to go there and make no difference and conform. The reason why we are there is because we bring a certain flair and a certain color. Be authentic and be yourself. And I am so happy. The other day I was calling it as it is. And I went and I met my partner over there and I said to him, Mpenzi, I call him Mpenzi. Why should I call him darling? You know. So I said, Mpenzi, you know, I might be fired today because I have spoken truth to power. You know what he said to me? If you get fired for the right reasons, then we are okay. Okay? So, thank you. So, I leave you with these final words. So let's talk about healing justice and our collective liberation, because we get liberated through healing as we heal ourselves. So what are the healing justice values? And this is still, I have borrowed from DRM. And he says, first, our collective memory and wisdom enables well-being. Our collective memory and wisdom enables well-being. For those of you who are lucky and your parents are still alive, please, this is the time for you to sit with them. Sit with them and have those conversations about what it means to be a man, to be a woman, to be a person, to be human. Okay? And then make sure that you expose your children to that knowing and that wisdom. Remember who you are, and that matters. 2, remember that our wellness is liberation. When we become well, we become free. Okay? Our interdependence is essential. We live, we're brought up, we have thrived, and we are here through the spirit of Ubuntu. We are only minoritized. We are not the minority. We are the global majority. Okay? And there is strength in numbers. There is power in numbers. But like somebody said, divide and rule. Divide and rule, where people who look like you and me meet each other in the street and do not want to be with each other. Why? Because you're of a different tribe. You're from a different country. Do you know these countries were never created for us? Yeah. Okay? So when these borders were drawn, were we consulted? No. Did they even sit in Africa to do it? No. They sat where? In Germany. And they drew some lines that said, I don't know what. So they built a house. It's like someone building a house for themselves. Then one day you come and say, my friend, you have built your house on my land. They say, okay, fine, we are going to leave. They leave the house. They never designed. They never consulted. And then 5 years later, they come and say, oh my God, you can't even take care of the house that I built for you. Built for me? Did I send you? Anyway, so Our wellness also requires honoring all bodies and valuing the conditions that we live in, valuing ourselves. We go back to Kenya and we go like, oh my God, I saw someone the other day saying, oh, you know, the first thing, this person had come from America, Kenyan, the first thing that hits you is the dust. It's a red dust that kind of clings onto everything, makes the buildings look old. Well, that red dust feeds the rest of the world. Yeah. When you go to Tesco and you buy your vegetables, that red dust, that's where they come from. Anyway, I can go on forever. So, I will leave you with this word. This is from Enfleshed, and it's about collective liberation. And it says we must learn and unlearn how to connect and create, to labor and to love in ways that will enable this salvation, this collective liberation where everyone thrives with access to resources, with agency and no fear of violence, with a right to rest and play and create, free from exploitation. Thank you.